Now we began here in verse 16, verse 1, and our parsha today is named Korach, or Korah in English. Korach, it says there in verse 1, the son of Ishar, the son against Moses, together with 250 of the sons of Israel, leaders in the community, prominent among the solemn feasts, men of repute. And so here we have Korach. Now, Korach means frozen, a frozen top, a frozen head. By idiom, people with frozen heads are called baldies. I don't know why. You know, when you think of Mount Baldy in any place, when it snows, that's probably where it freezes and it snows up there in the front, first of all. But here we have Korah. Now, Korah was a cousin of Moshe. He was a cousin of and these other guys were sons of Reuben. Now remember who Reuben was. Reuben was the firstborn son of Jacob and Leah. So he was a firstborn son. And he takes Dathan and Abiram, son of Elah, and On, son of Pelath, again, sons of Reuben, and they together rebelled. The word rebel is the word in Hebrew meri. We get the word Mara or Miriam from the roots of these words. And the word actually means bitter. The word means bitterness. And it's interesting that the word to rebel comes from the word bitter. It doesn't come from the word sin, iniquity. It doesn't come from all these other negative words that it could have come from. But it comes from the word to be bitter. Rebellion begins in a bitter heart. Now, we are also told that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. So rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Whatever Adonai sees in witchcraft and all that ugliness, all that perverseness in witchcraft, and he tells us to keep away, that's the same thing he sees in a bitter, rebellious heart. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. And over here we have some hearts that have become bitter. Now, I don't know why they became bitter. I don't know why Korach became a bitter man that he rebelled. I don't know why the sons of Reuben became so bitter that there was an alliance between the Leviim, the Levites, and the Reubenites. But we have here a conspiracy against Moshe. We have a conspiracy movement. We have a movement to come against Moshe. Now, we've seen rebellions in many forms, in many places, political and religious, the congregational. We've seen all that. The first rebellion, by the way, the first rebellion took place in eternity. The first rebellion took place in the heavens when the guardian cherub, the cherub that was guardian, and by the way, the word guardian there, anointed cherub, that you will find in Ezekiel 28 is the word Moshiach Sherev. And this anointed, this guardian cherub, who was the leader, the worship leader of the cherubim and the seraphim, said, I will rival the Most High. We are told in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 there about this Lucifer, son of the dawn. And the word Lucifer is the word, the shining, the brightness. We get the word in Latin, luz. In fact, the word Lucifer is a Latin term for the shining one, the bright one. And this bright one, this shining one, this Lucifer, this morning star, because of his pride, because of what? His pride. I will rival the Most High. I will ascend into the mount of the Kehillah, the mount of the assembly, and I will rival the Most High. And we are told that he took 1/3 of the host of heaven with him. And so think of this. The first rebellion, what caused bitterness until sin was found in your heart? You were perfect in majesty, perfect in beauty, the instruments of which you were made of. Until sin was first found in you. I don't know what caused Lucifer to become so bitter that he rebelled against Yahweh in the heavens. By the way, his name is not Lucifer no more. Adonai took that name away, Lucifer. He's no longer Lucifer. He is Chasatan. He is Hodiablios, the devil, Satan. And he's always called the Satan in Hebrew, not just Satan. He's called the Satan, the adversary, the accuser, Hadablios. He's the accuser of the brethren. He's the adversary. He's our enemy. He's our adversary. So no longer is he Lucifer. Now he is Hasatan, Hadiablios. But the same thing happened here. Why did Korach have so much coraje in him, have so much bitterness in him, so much anger in him, that he chose, like Hasatan, to rebel. And it says, not only did he take Dathan and Abiram and all these guys from the tribe of Reuben, it says there, together with 250 of the sons of Israel, leaders in the community, leaders. He didn't take the riffraff. They never go for the riffraff. They always go for the leaders. They always go for those that have authority, have somewhat leadership, have somewhat of influence. But Korah, the sons of Reuben, and 250 of the sons of Israel, leaders in the community, prominent men in the Moedim. These are the ones that organized the Pesach, the Sukkot, and all these Moedim, all these assemblies, all these times. By the way, the word Moedim is there. Men of repute. Men of repute. Not from the top and not from the bottom, but that middle management area that Moshe had under him. These were Moshe's leaders. This is not Moshe and Aaron. This is not Joshua. This is not that top, and it's not the riffraff. It's that middle group. And they rebelled. This conspiracy, it's a conspiracy. If one person rebelled, it's him. But look at this. He has a conspiracy. Reubenites, 250 leaders. And it says there, these joined forces against Moses and Aaron. They joined forces. Think of 250 men coming with these big boys in front, Korach, Dathan, Abiram, On, these guys coming. And here you are, Moshe and Aaron. Moshe, the most humblest man on earth, it says. They're in the tent of meeting in front of Adonai. This big crowd coming, joining forces together against these two humble men. And they said to them, they together, and you've seen where you have groups of people coming against someone. You can always see them with their, if it was at night, with their torches and all their stuff coming against them. And they tell Moshe and Aaron, and we'll start seeing the bitterness here. We'll start seeing a bitterness come up in this scripture. You take too much on yourselves. You take too much on yourselves. In fact, these lower class leaders are telling the upper class leaders, the ones who Adonai had designated, you take too much on yourselves. Now, we already know what happened last week and the week before that. We already know what happened. Remember with Moshe, when 3 weeks ago, when his sister Miriam, and she brings Aaron with her, and they accuse Moshe, why did you marry that Cushite? Why did you marry that black woman? They got mad at Moshe because he had married someone who was a Cushite. And they gossiped. The word there, they gossiped against Moshe. And what was Adonai's judgment? A leprosy as a judgment, not because she had touched a person with Hansen's disease, not because she had, but gossip, and the gossiping spirit that Miriam had, as it probably went through the camp, it was so bad that Adonai said, kick her out of the camp. And she became instantly leprous. And she had to be out of the camp for a certain number of days until Adonai judged her for her gossip. Let me tell you, gossip. And so many times we judge people because of what they do, what they say, or how they're dressed. And, we kind of get away from me. You're unclean. But the very people we kind of come against and say, oh, they're unclean. Oh, did you hear so-and-so? He's very unclean. That is more unclean than probably what that other person is. Gossip is probably the ultimate of uncleanness that we could bring upon ourselves. And then, after that, the 12 spies go out. And after those 12 spies go out, 10 come back and give an evil report. 2 give a good report. And Adonai judges the community. Adonai, once again, like with Miriam, Adonai judges the community. And the 10 spies are killed. And the judgment of 40 years in the wilderness is given by Adonai. Can you imagine all these times with the quails, with the water from the time they left Egypt? Can you imagine Dathan and Abiram and Korach and all these guys, these 200? Can you imagine all the times that Moses did something and little by little they didn't like it? They didn't like it. And Moses does something else, and they didn't like it. And Moses does something else, and they didn't like it. After all, it wasn't Moses, by the way, it was Yahweh. But Moses is the spokesman. Moses is the messenger, and most people always kill the messenger. And that Moses. Who is he telling Miriam this? And who is he, coming against the 12 spies? Who is that Moses? This is not what happens here today with Korach is not something that just boom, out of the clear blue sky happens. It's something that's been building up, building up, building up, building up. Bitterness begins with usually one thing that isn't resolved. One thing that you don't like about someone that you don't resolve. And all of a sudden, that bitterness grows. In the New Covenant Scripture, it's called the root of bitterness. You take too much on yourselves. The whole community and all its members are consecrated, and Yahweh lives among them. Why set yourselves higher than the community of Yahweh? And by the way, this is what's interesting. Solomon tells us nothing new is under the sun. What is, was, what was, is, and what is, will be. There's nothing new. Everything's always the same. This still happens today. One of the most important aspects between a Messianic congregation and a Christian congregation is that a messianic congregation always follows biblical authority. And biblical authority is different than Christian ways of doing things. And biblical authority is very hard, very strict, because Adonai, yes, we believe in an Elohim of grace, compassion, mercy. Yeshua loved us. But let me tell you, the judgments of Moshe are still within the new covenant scriptures, as we're going to see. So what these guys were actually saying is, Moses, we believe that we're all equal. There's no such thing as leaders. In fact, I've had so many people come and say, well, I don't believe in pastors. I don't believe in teachers. I don't believe in churches. The mountains is my church. They don't even know what Scripture's talking about when they say that. The word church is a King James word that does not translate the Greek and Hebrew word kehillah or ecclesia. It was just put in, but the Hebrew and Greek word are ecclesia and kehillah. And it means an assembly. An assembly. We are an assembly. It means a community, an edah. We are a community. We are actually olive tree community. We're a familia. We're a family. Israel is a family, and we here are a family of a family. We're a little family. There's bigger families, but we're a family. We're a familia. And we need to treat one another as this familia. And yes, there is no male, female, there's no Jew or Gentile, but you know, workers, the deacons, and there is the family, the body that meets together here. And it's a vertical leadership, not a horizontal leadership. There is no such thing as a horizontal leadership anyplace. Think of the military, those of you that were in the military. You could not have horizontal leader. It's impossible. In the family, there's no such thing as a horizontal leadership in the family. The husband and the wife are not co-equal in leadership. It's not a 50-50 thing in leadership. The husband is the head of the wife. There's a general, lieutenants, sergeants, privates. In everything, in the natural order, there's always leadership. Take a herd of horses. Take any herd of horses, just any herd of horses. What will you get within a week? You will get a leader. You will get a leader. In nature, you will always get a leader. Even in the places where there is no leadership, even when people say, we have a committee and all the committee members are equal. Little by little, whether you like it or not, one of them will become the spokesman. It's automatic. That's the way we're made. But Adonai is the one that set leadership. Now, in a sense, Korach says a half-truth. Yes, we are all holy, or we should all be holy. Every one of us should be set apart to Adonai. But why set yourselves higher than the community of Yahweh? Because Yahweh set us higher than the community is really the answer. And Moshe was called by Yahweh. Think of it. Yahweh did not go to Dathan, Abiram. He did not go to Korach and say, I want you guys to form a committee to get us out of Goshen. I want you to form a committee to go and get us out of Egypt. I want a committee to be sent to Pharaoh. If Adonai would have done that, they would have had the same problems that the Democrats and the Republicans have, because when you get together in committee form, usually everybody wants to do what's right for them. And we would probably still be arguing before the court of Pharaoh today. We want to get out of Egypt. No, Adonai took a man. Took a man that was a sheep herder that says, I can't talk. And got him and told him to do, and it was Adonai's outstretched arm, mighty hand that did that. Moses, when he heard this, threw himself downward on the ground. Notice what Moses did. Moses, when these guys got the sword out, when they came, okay, let's have a shootout here. Notice that Moses didn't take a shootout stand. He didn't raise his sword to do a sword fight. Moses did what we should always do when we're confronted with anything: put our face to the ground. And we come to Adonai. Moshe came to Adonai. Then he said to Korach, then. Many times what we do is we fight back, and then afterwards we come to Adonai having to say, Father, I'm sorry for what I said, what I did. No, we come to Adonai first. We put our face to the ground. We humble ourselves. And then he says to Korach and all his followers, tomorrow morning Yahweh will reveal who is his, who is the consecrated man that he will allow to come near him. The one he allows to come near is the one whom he has chosen. This is what you are to do. Take the censers of Korah and all his followers, fill them with fire, and tomorrow put incense in them before Yahweh. Yahweh will choose the one who is the consecrated man. Sons of Levi, you take too much on yourselves. So look at this. He comes to Adonai. Adonai tells him what to do. Because remember, Adonai is the one that chose Moshe. He did not choose the sons of Levi. Now the sons of Levi have a ministry. The Levitical ministry is an important ministry. In fact, Korach and his brothers were the ones that carried the Ark of the Covenant. Their ministry was to carry the Ark of the Covenant. But since Moshe said they take too much out of themselves, can you imagine Korach when the priests would get the Ark of the Covenant and they would cover it with hides, and then they'd bring it out, and the sons of Korach had to carry it by hand. The other things of the tabernacle were carried by ox cart. But the Ark of the Covenant, the altar of incense, the altar of sacrifice were all carried by Korach and his brothers. And can you imagine every time they set it down and the priest would take it in there and the priest would do the ritual? Can you imagine Korach saying, I'm as good as them? Who are they? Who are they? Just because they're sons of Aaron? I'm a better man than that guy. I'm a firstborn son. I'm not like these guys. These guys, because remember, in Egypt and before the golden calf, anybody who was the firstborn son, he was a big man in the community. Just because he was the firstborn son. He was the priest of the family just because he was a firstborn son. But remember what Moshe did? He took away the authority of the firstborn son in spiritual matters, only in spiritual matters. And he gave it to the Levites. And he gave it to the sons of Aaron for the Kohanim, for the Kohuna, the priesthood. And so all of a sudden, I could just see Korach, little by little, that Korach building up and building up and building up and building up, and that bitterness just building up. And every time they set it down, every time they took it up, every time they set it down, every time they took it up. Till one day, right after this incident of you're going to go around for 40 years. Can you imagine 40 years of having to lift and take, lift and take? It was too much and he blew up. Actually, from Adonai's point of view, as Moshe said, you sons of Levi, you 250 men, you sons of Reuben, and you Korach, you guys to take too much on yourselves because you're not like us. Always remember, every one of us has gifts. Every gift is different. Every place is different. I can't take a lower gift. I can't take a higher gift. We could only have that which he has given to us. That's the most important thing in ministry. For those of you that aspire for ministry, young men that aspire for ministry, remember, you could only have that which Adonai gives you. I can only have what Adonai has given me. I can't have more. I can't have less. Levites, you only have what you, Korach, what you are called to do, that's what you're called to do. You cannot be a Cohen. If Korach wanted to be a Cohen, he could not be a Cohen because he wasn't the son of Aaron. But these guys, they wanted more. It's not that Moshe and Aaron wanted more. They had what Adonai had given them. It's that these lower class people, this middle management area, wanted top management. And that's not Adonai's way. It's only to those whom Adonai has given. In verse 10, he says, he has called you to be near him, you and all your brother Levites with you, and now you aspire to the office of the priesthood as well. You have a ministry, and you want a higher ministry. You can't have that. Now we see that bitterness, what Korah and these other guys wanted. They wanted an equality. And you know what? They might have been better men, but Adonai chose Aaron and his sons to be the priests. What's interesting from Yeshua's time, think of when Yeshua was standing before the high priest. When Paul was standing before the high priest. These high priests weren't even real priests in themselves. But both Yeshua and Paul respected the office. Respected the office. Even though they weren't real priests themselves. Here we have real priests. Aaron and his sons, real ones. And Korach and these other men did not respect him. Well, they brought the censers. They filled the censers with incense. And whoever censers, Adonai accepts. They're the real ones. And of course, who did Adonai accept? He accepted Aaron's. By the way, in verse 12, Moshe summoned Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they replied, we will not come. So they even rebelled further, that if you guys, you Reubenites, if you guys feel you guys are up for the priesthood, come. But they stayed in their tents. They stayed in their tents. And all of a sudden, Moshe says there in verse 20 and 21, stand apart from this assembly. I am going to destroy them here and now. They threw themselves face downward to the ground. Oh, Elohim, Elohim of the spirits that give life to every living creature, you will be angry with the whole community for one man's sin. Yahweh answered to Moshe, say this to the community, stand clear of the dwelling of Korach. Stand away, I beg you, from the tents of those perverse men, and touch nothing that belongs to them, for fear that with all the sins you too will be swept away. So they moved away from the dwelling of Korach. Dathan and Abiram had come out and were standing at their tent doors with their wives and their sons and their young children. Moshe said this, by this you will know that Yahweh himself has sent me to perform these tasks. If these people die a natural death as men die, then Yahweh has not sent me. But if Yahweh does something new, if the earth should open its mouth and swallow themselves and all that belongs to them, so that they go down to Sheol, to the grave, then you will know that these men have rejected Yahweh. The moment he finished saying these words, the ground split open under their feet. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them, their families too, and all of Korah's men and all their belongings. They went alive to Sheol, they and all their possessions. The earth closed over them, and they disappeared from the midst of the assembly. At the cries of the Israelites, they ran away, for the earth must not swallow us. A fire came down from Yahweh and consumed the 250 men carrying incense. Whew. That should put the fear of Yahweh in every one of us. That should put the fear of Yahweh in all of us. Adonai has leadership. In the New Covenant scriptures, we have biblical leadership. In the New Covenant, we have the pastors, the teachers, the elders, whom Adonai calls. This is the local leadership. There is no such thing as a congregation without a pastor. You cannot have a congregation without a pastor. There always has to be one person at the top, an overseer, an episcopos. You have to have elders. By the way, there's no such thing as a congregation with just a pastor and no elders. You gotta have new covenant leadership. You have to have a plurality of leadership, but you have to have someone at the top. And then you have to have elders. There is no such thing as a congregation, by the way, of just a pastor and his wife. If you ever go to a congregation and the pastor's wife is the co-pastor, run as fast as you can. Because usually what happens there is wives tend to have an influence. And many times, as we have seen, the influence of a pastora, of a pastor's wife, if she is a co-pastor, will overshadow the authority of the pastor. Then you get into Jezebel spirit. Remember what the Jezebel spirit is. The Jezebel spirit is the spirit of a woman that wants to control the husband and wants to control the man of Elohim, because that's what Jezebel did. Jezebel, her whole thing, a Jezebel isn't a lady of the street or something like that, like most people think. A Jezebel is some woman who controls her husband through any means, through the influence, through finances, through any kind of stuff like that. She's a Jezebel. And it's a woman that wants to control the man of Elohim. Because what did Jezebel want to do? She wanted to control Elijah. And she put even fear of into Elijah, that Elijah ran from her. In the New Testament, there is no congregation that should be ruled by a woman, by the way. There's no such thing as female pastors. Impossible for a congregation to have female pastors. You know, female pastors actually came about from the cults. In fact, the first female pastors were members of congregations that were cults. One of the first ones, the Seventh-day Adventists, and others in the 1970s through the Azusa Street revival is where, in fact, in the 19th century is when women pastors, for all these last 2,000 years, until modern times, we haven't had women pastors. So there's no such thing as a congregation with female leadership. There's no such thing as a congregation with the husband and the wife being the pastor, and usually the wife becomes the treasurer and the vice president and the secretary and everything, and the leadership is run by a mom and pop. There's no such thing as that. You have to have a pastor, and you have to have elders, and you will have deacons. The deacons are not the elders, and the elders are not deacons. I want our elders to stand here. Dave, Arturo, and Gilbert. Gilbert and them, they're doing their elding and their deaconing outside in the yard. They're taking care of your cards and all that. But Gilbert, Arturo, and Dave are our elders here. A congregation is made up of a pastor and elders. And there could be other pastors. In fact, we're praying, and soon here we're going to ordain Dave associate pastor, because I want to have someone to be an associate pastor here also. But these three men are our elders, and our deacons, and you may take your seats, our deacons are Mr. T and Dave. Is Dave here, or is he out there too? David Montes is our other deacon. The deacons are the ones that handle all the physical things with the building and all that. So if you have a spiritual problem, see the elders. If you need prayer, see the elders, it says. But if you have a physical problem, if for some reason you have 3 fans over here, and over here you only have 2 fans, and you say, why is that fan in the back missing? Well, go talk to Mr. T and ask Mr. T or Dave. Say, Dave, why is that fan missing over there? You guys don't have no fan over there. And they'll probably tell you, oh, because we don't have the finances to buy, to get that one fixed. So, by the way, pastors are shepherds. Have anybody ever seen a shepherd out there in the field with no sheep? I've never seen shepherds out there with their shepherd staff, no sheep. You know, there's all kinds of pastors out there with no sheep. But Adonai has called us to take care of the sheep. And over here, we have the punishment of those who would aspire to a leadership that wasn't theirs. Now, think of it. These guys were the deacons. Can you imagine if the deacons would come up to us and say, well, why am I not a pastor? Why can't I stand up there and preach? I could preach probably. And you know what? I've known people that could out-preach me. In fact, I've known women that could out-preach me. It has nothing to do with who could do a better or a worse job. It's who Adonai chooses and who Adonai calls. And by the way, every pastor, every elder, and every deacon must be qualified. There is no such thing as a person saying, I ordain myself. And we have a lot of, and like we said several weeks ago, some are sent and some just went. We have congregations of men and women that just went. They've ordained themselves. They've given themselves a doctorate in internet studies in Bible. Do you know a lot of people, they have a doctorate in internet studies in Bible? They have doctorates in reading a denominational book or this and that. Adonai calls the man who's an elder, a deacon, to be qualified in their place. Now, none of us deserve this because it's a gift of grace. Grace means what? You don't deserve it. But you got to be qualified in it. That's why there's so many people that are out there, have never been qualified, but they have a paper. Back one time, this guy came up to me and said, you know what, I would like to be ordained as a pastor. And so I said, okay, come and study with me 5 years. 5 years? I don't have time to find the lost or I'll get there. Well, you know, you're called to be, every one of us is called to be a witness. So if you think of the lost, witness to them. That's it. You don't have to be a pastor to witness. Everyone should be a witness. But he went and started his own church. And then he did something that this guy, boy, man, he was sharp. He blindsided me. He asked me a question. He says, if I were to be ordained, what would the ordination certificate look like? And I said, oh, the way we do it here is we just say, you know, at that time it was, our mother organization, Maranatha Missions Incorporated, certifies that so-and-so, in this case, so-and-so was duly qualified and all that, and is ordained a minister. And so he says, I'd really like to see one. And so I said, oh, I have one here. And he says, can you just put my name there so I could, you know, if I see it, I'll aspire to it, kind of thing. So I had one made. I put in the computer and whipped one up. And he says, I'm going to pray. Well, he took off. All of a sudden, he started this big, giant church over here in a big building here at the corner, around the corner. And one day he says, you know, why don't you come and see what we're doing? So I go, and he says, sit right here. So I go, and I look in his office, and I kind of, oh, wow, he has a nice office, you know. And I look, and there's my ordination certificate. He told everybody that I ordained him. I never ordained this guy. Sad to say, he got in trouble in several ways, and he is no longer a pastor. Although I did find out he's playing guitar at another big church. There's all kinds of, we could tell you stories, right? We could tell you guys stories of how we've seen this. But leadership is something very, very careful that we must look at. Now, in closing, one more thing I want to talk about is we have Aaron's branch. Well, that's another story. We don't have time for that. In Numbers 18, we have the priests and the Levites portions that Adonai gives to the Levites and to the priests. And these are what we call today pastor salaries. And one of the questions that people have many times asked when it talks about authority, biblical authority, think of this. Right after this incident where Adonai cleans up the mess, through the censors, through Aaron's branch that budded from the 12 leaders. Adonai chose Moshe. Adonai chose Aaron through these two miraculous events. Then he talks about the ministers' salaries, the salaries and how they will live. And one of the questions has come up is, well, what about in the New Testament? What does it say about that? I want us to go to two scriptures in the New Testament. 1 Thessalonians 5:12. 1 Thessalonians 5:12. And this has to do with leadership. Of course, we've talked about the leadership gifts, the fivefold ministry, which today is, according to Paul's teachings, built on the elders. First Thessalonians, what did I say? 5:12. Here in 1 Thessalonians 5:12, it says, "We appeal to you, brothers, be considerate of those who are working among you and are above you in Yahweh as your teachers. Have the greatest respect and affection for them because of their work. Be at peace among yourselves." And then he goes on to encourage. But it says, who are above you in Yahweh. And here's where, again, a lot of times people today say, hey, we're all equal. We're all the same. I don't want to have no one above me. I don't believe in pastors above me. I don't believe in all this stuff. That's, religion. It's not religion, it's Torah. And Paul here says that in the new covenant, in the Kehillah, there are people that are above you. There are people that are your teachers. Those that teach you. Now, hopefully everyone is here because you want to be discipled. The purpose you're here is because you want to be discipled. You're not here to disciple. In fact, so many times people come here and say, Pastor, you need to be teaching this. This is the way you should do this. You should do, why don't you do? Well, wait a second. I'm here to disciple you. You're not here to disciple me. We in the leadership, although discipleship never ends and learning never ends, and most of you that know me know that I am constantly always learning and trying to learn more stuff. But over here, we want you to come. If you are new here, in fact, our brother here was talking the other day, and he came in and said, I want to, and I said, you know what, over here, what we believe is that you should be here, 6 months, a year, and let us get to know you, and you get to know us. And like this, we become a body. We become ingrained in each other. We assimilate one to another. Because many people have come here wanting to teach, and you know what? I've allowed people to teach, and all of a sudden, they've taught, or they've, some of you remember the guy that was here, I'm here to do what pastor says, never do anything against him. The next week, he had his own congregation. What? In fact, it was on the internet. He had a Facebook of his congregation. And I said, wait a second. Didn't this guy just say last week, I'm here? He was actually running a congregation. While he was a member here, he had a congregation on the side that he was getting people from here. And you know what? I'm always very leery of people that come here, and then little by little, they start getting sheep from here, and then taking them away and having their own Bible studies. That is so unethical. That is such, to me, that is one of the worst things. I would never go no place and steal sheep. Or we used to have a youth leader, and at that time, we would, after worship, we would send all the youth to the back. I don't do that no more in a Messianic congregation. We would send the youth to the back. And he had the high schoolers. And every time that I'd say something or says, well, that's what pastor believes, but this is the truth. So he, in the back and to the youth, was teaching something that everything that I'd say on Wednesday nights or that I teach him, he would say, that's what pastor believes, but let me tell you, this is the way I believe. And little by little, this person, finally when we caught him, he took off. And all the youth leaders that he had under him and the youth, I lost a whole generation of people that to this day, when they see me, when those young kids that are now married and have kids of their own, they see me, they don't like me because of the gossip that my youth leader. And from then I said, you know what? There's no such thing as, no, there should be no youth leaders. There should be men, young men that will help, but the pastor is the one, and that's why I have the youth here, because I'm your pastor. You don't have another pastor. I'm called to be your pastor. And you know what? If you don't think I'm your pastor, like with Moshe, if you don't accept Moshe's leadership, then you are walking on dangerous ground. And you know what? What did Moshe say? Shh, get away from those people. If you hear me say something here and someone else tells you, well, that's not true. Let me tell you something else. This isn't the way you do this. You do it this way. If someone goes, you run away from those people. And you keep clear from those people. And anybody, any one of you here, if you want to, between you and Adonai, you could go start your own church. Anybody could. Get your own followers, get your own congregation, whether it's in your home, whether it's a rented building, you buy a building, whatever. Get that congregation going, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I've been doing this now. I was ordained in 1974 when I was 24 years old. And I've been preaching and ministering. In fact, since even before that, I have actually been teaching at least 4 nights a week. And many of you could verify that. Robert could verify that. Sherry, others could verify that. Those of you that have met some of my friends from the Navy could verify that since 1972, I've been teaching at least 4 Bible studies a week. All these years, studying and teaching. And I believe that Adonai wants to continue to do a mighty work. And so we believe that Adonai has spiritual leadership, and we will talk more about spiritual leadership. Let's go ahead and stand. Peace. Shalom, shalom. You may take your seats for a moment.